Okay, so today I'm going to talk about how to engage the disengaged. And what I mean by that is, we all write workouts, and there's a wide range of athletes in a lot of our workout groups. And some kids are really into it, and some really aren't. And I think sometimes we assume a kid is lazy or assume a kid doesn't really want to get better or do something or whatever imagined thing we have in our mind about an athlete. But a lot of times we put kids in a box. Um, Teams do this unintentionally by creating multiple levels to their team. Let's say you have like a bronze level for your 11-12s, a silver level, and a gold level, right? And I know what you're saying that like we do need these things because different athletes should be in groups that fit their abilities. Yes, that's great. And if you're on a team that's big enough to separate out, I think that's good. If you have the coaching staff to spread it out, just know a lot of times the coaches that aren't as good are on that bronze level, and then your next level coach is on that silver level, and then your best coach is on that gold level, right? Which makes sense. The best coaches a lot of times get with the best athletes because they can get the most out of them, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just letting you know that especially in the age group level, 11, 12, 10 and under, 13, 14 even, depending on the 13, 14s, you can put kids in a box, and it's really easy for that bronze level swimmer to just always feel like they're a bronze level swimmer, and they can never really make that jump. So if you have that on your team, or you're coaching that group, or if you're coaching a wide range of athletes, meaning you have the gold and silver and bronze kids all in the same group, and you're trying to get the most out of them, how do we engage them? How do we move them past that point? A lot of times in the swimming world, the kid that jumps from bronze to silver to gold is maybe they're a little more athletic, they're a little more talented out the gate. They're a little more coachable, so they pick up things quickly, like they don't need as much hand holding. And then they also know how to pick the right intensity. This is so important. A lot of times, the kids that aren't doing as well, it's an intensity issue. And but I what I mean by intensity is just like working hard, like swimming fast, lifting heavy weights, whatever heavy is for you, it's relative. But you'll have, for example, you have a kid who's like, I can't do a push up. And they probably could do a push up, but they just assume, I never do push ups. I don't really like push ups. I'm just going to say I can't do push ups. That's what I would call a disengaged athlete. They have no idea where they're at. They have no idea how to get better. They don't even know, like, hey, what's my next step here? So let's talk about how do we engage the disengaged. And the secret here is this stuff works even for your engaged athletes. Like, they'll eat this stuff up. So just off the gate, you got to know who they are as the coach. So I don't care if you're the coach of that bronze group or you have the mixed group. Like, the kids that are there, they deserve your attention, and they also like you should know who they are. Because if you have this giant group of kids and you only really know half of them, the ones who try, and I'm putting try in quotations, then you're just going to make all these assumptions, and you're not going to pay attention to the bottom half. And before I go forward, I just want you to know I am not advocating for putting all your time and energy into the lazy kids. I think there's a difference between disengaged and lazy. The disengaged kid, like I said before, just doesn't really know, doesn't have the exposure, doesn't have the experience, or almost has never been told, like, try harder, do more things. The lazy kid chooses not to do things. And you have this at every single level. You have kids that are more talented who can swim faster, and they don't. It's a choice. They could go to practice, and they don't. So there's a difference here. And I will say, as my season progresses, especially like the last 2 months, championship season, if you are in that lazy category, I spend a lot less time on you, because when it's crunch time at the very end of the season, I spent the last 3 months trying to get you moving, and we didn't get it going, and we will try again next season. So you will do what the rest of the team's going to do for the rest of the season. So step one, know who they are. Like, you got to know their name. You got to know what they're good at. And then you as the coach should be able to know what is good for that athlete. Like, we all have standards. For example, in my 13-14 group, any swimmer who can make hundreds free on 115 or 120, like that's kind of like our A training group for the most part. And I know everybody on the team who can and cannot make that. Okay. And not only do I know that, I know who can make hundreds on 130, and I know who can make hundreds on 140, and I know who shouldn't even be doing hundreds because after swimming a 50, they're swimming so slow and so ugly, it's pointless. And that kid at that point should just be doing 50s or a shorter distance where they can hit the execution. So step one is know where they're at, whether it's knowing their times. A lot of times this is knowing their training level, training ability. So going into the next piece, like I said about the execution and knowing where they're at, is knowing what is the next step for them. So once you know the athlete, you should be able to go up to them and be like, hey, it's really good that you did this, whatever they did today, X, Y, and Z. It could be stroke count. It could be a skill. It could be a time, whatever. You should know what the next step is for them because the disengaged athlete, they don't know what's next. This is where the coach comes in. A 12-year-old does not know what is the next step in their training ability. You will have athletes who do know, but a lot of them don't. And you as the coach should know what's next. And we always want to point kids to what is the next step. What is the next level of this sport, of this training, of these opportunities for them, okay? And again, this goes back to knowing them. So if you're not in the business of knowing your athletes and just showing up to a practice, writing the workout and saying, do it exactly as I say and you'll get better, this probably really isn't for you, right? I'm talking about coaching, not writing workouts, because there is a difference. Anybody on Instagram can write a workout, right? Not everybody can coach. So you should know what's next for them. And on top of knowing your athletes and knowing what's next for them is giving them challenges that are in their wheelhouse and letting them know. So back to what I said about making hundreds on specific intervals. I wouldn't put my slowest kid in my fastest part of the training group because they're just going to be swimming. They're just going to be floundering. And every now and then, sometimes a kid just has to swim, get the workout done. But a lot of times, it's not going to mean a lot for them, especially with newer kids, kids with a little less ability, or kids that I'm trying to teach. And teaching isn't just at the lower level. It's at all levels. We put things on a bigger interval where we can talk and where we can execute and where we can know what we're doing. And this is like such a great example from yesterday's practice. We did 1075s kick with my A group on 125. My B group did 1050s on 125, which is like they all got so much rest. The B group, the A group was like getting 5 to 10 seconds rest. It was a little tougher. And then the B group was getting so much rest, but I specifically said, everybody on the B group, your goal is going to be to get under a minute every single time. And I'm going to be calling out times at every 50. So the A group, I don't have to call out times. A lot of them get it on their own. I can just keep my eye on them, say, hey, good job here, keep pushing. But the B group, I'm out there with my stopwatch and I'm calling out times. Boom, boom, boom. And a great example of this is I had one swimmer who she's going like 57s. She's reaching my goal that I said, hey, make sure you go under a minute. But I start calling out times and I'm like, she went 56 on one of them. And I was like, there you go. That's better. You went a little faster on that one. Way to hold it up. I acknowledged it. I said that she got faster. And then the very next one, she's 51s. And she's 51s for the last 6 of them. I think she was 48 on the very last one. And I talked to her afterwards and I said, hey, it felt good knowing how fast you were going and how you could go faster. And she said, yeah. And I had just given my athletes a talk on engagement. That's why this is fresh in my brain. But I said, the difference between when you were going like 56s and you're 51, that gap is your engagement in the practice. When you made that switch to knowing what you're doing and knowing what you could do, you got so much more out of that workout. And you as the coach, if you want to get engagement, easy engagement out of your team, get out a stopwatch and call out times. If you coach a group of 30 kids at the same time, it's really hard to call out times for everybody. But in that situation, you can write like 2 different sets and you're timing one set while the other group is doing something, maybe a little more, something they can do on their own in the other lanes. But calling out times is so huge and it works at every single level. I'm talking 9-year-olds. Just pull out a stopwatch, you're doing something, and just start calling out times. So call it out. Call out what they're doing. So know your swimmers, know where they're at, know what the next step is, call out what they're doing. And you got to acknowledge it. That's like the final piece of this loop. Like I finished that conversation with the kid is you call out what they're doing, you finish that loop, and then you store that away in your little memory bank and you say, all right, next time, let's see if we can just start at 51s or let's see if we can hold 50s, whatever your push is, but always close the loop on how they did. Because disengagement is, it's not only not knowing what you're doing, but it's not knowing where you've been. The athlete that isn't a great swimmer doesn't know that when they do 75s that they average around 120. They just don't know. They're not getting their time. They're just swimming the yards. But when you can look at them and say, on week 1 you were holding 120s, on week 2 whatever, same 120s, but by week 5 you're holding 116s. That is improvement. And then if you want a kid to ignite that internal fire that is really the heart, I think, of kids getting better, it's show them that they're getting better. Help them become aware that they're getting better. And the same thing happens with meets. But the hard part with meets is if you only wait for meets for them to see improvement, they still don't really connect those dots. I mean, they can see best times, but that's great. But, imagine you have a kid who's not really engaged and they've been training for a month because it's the first month of season before you have a meet. And they miss the first meet, so they don't even go to a meet till like 9 weeks into the season. That is so long. And then they swim times, and it's good, but they're not really that engaged, right? They're just not that aware. So, hope this helps. Take those athletes that are disengaged and engage them. And I promise you, you won't have to do it forever because you'll have athletes who you're teaching how to get engaged in the workout. And it's not just times. Like stroke counts is another easy one. It works with 8-year-olds. It works with 18-year-olds. Counting strokes, comparing your stroke counts. They will eventually get it on their own. A lot of times they will. And you will get to a certain point where you have to be like, hey, I'm not going to call out your times on this one. I want you to get your own times and tell me how you did. And that's like the next step. It's like, and they come back and they're like, hey, I held 51s on all those 50s. And you say, okay, that was all right. Or you do a checkpoint halfway, like who feels like they're trying hard enough, right? That sort of thing. And lastly, if you're a coach looking for an easy way for all of your athletes to get better, try harder. Like your athletes have to try harder. So you stop your group for a second. You look at everybody and say, I don't see a single person here who is really. Now let's rephrase that, because then you might piss somebody off if you say that, which is not the end of the world, but you want to be motivating here. So what I would say is I would stop the group and I would say, hey, a lot of you guys think you're trying hard enough, but I'm telling you that if you want to impress yourself at the next meet, you're going to have to find a way to try harder. And you put it in their court and you tell them why. Like in that sentence, I fit in like what they'll get out of it, right? Because it is about them. And you'll get more out of it. And you can put a standard on it, say, at the end of these next 5, I want to, at the end, everybody raise your hand. You'll raise your hand if you were 2 seconds or faster on every 50 than the previous 5. Boom. Right? And you can reward them. You can do whatever you want, but it's a fantastic way. So hope this helps. And if you're really trying to become a better coach, head over to betterswimcoach.com. I got some workouts there. You could even download a full course on Butterfly. Man, if you sign up for my email newsletter, I send out emails to help you guys out, share some workouts, that sort of thing. A lot of ways to get better. Thank you for listening to this and following along, and I'll see you guys on the next one.